Have you ever been jolted awake in the middle of the night, your leg twisting in pain as if it had a mind of its own? That kind of pain that makes you sit straight up, gasping, wondering what went wrong this time. I'll never forget the look on Harold Jenkins's face when he told me about it. That quiet mix of exhaustion and hope. A few weeks ago, I met Harold at a small hardware store in St. Louis. He was leaning on his cart, stretching his foot a little as he talked. "It's not easy getting old," he chuckled. "But you learn things your doctor never told you." And that's when he shared something that, honestly, surprised me. A simple foot trick that stopped the night leg cramps that had haunted him for years. He told me how those cramps used to steal his sleep, his peace, even his mornings. How he tried every pill, every lotion, every warm bath, until he discovered this one method that changed everything. And I could see it in his eyes. That relief. That spark that said, "I got my nights back." Have you ever felt something like that? Those nights where pain keeps you awake, wondering if it'll ever end? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Harold's story might just be what you've been needing to hear. Harold Jenkins was born in the summer of 1953. In a modest little neighborhood on the south side of St. Louis. He was the kind of boy who'd help old Mrs. Carter carry her groceries home, then stay to fix her porch light. Those small acts, unnoticed by many, built in him a quiet pride, a belief that good work, done with care, always mattered. Harold graduated high school in 1971, a year filled with noise, Vietnam on the TV, protests downtown, and dreams that seemed both possible and fragile. College wasn't in the cards, money was tight, and his father's health had worsened. So Harold took what he knew, wiring, circuits, and patience, and landed his first full-time job as an apprentice electrician. It was during those early working years that Harold met Linda. She was a secretary at the construction office where he often picked up blueprints. He and Linda married in a small church outside St. Louis on a cool spring morning. Harold worked long hours as an electrician. Then came the recession of the early 90s. Jobs dried up, contracts slowed, and for the first time, Harold found himself sitting at the kitchen table staring at unpaid bills. He picked up whatever work he could, rewiring basements, fixing fuses for neighbors, anything to keep the lights on, literally and figuratively. Some evenings he'd sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sunset paint the rooftops, wondering how life had moved so fast. Then came the aches, not the sharp kind from work, but the dull, constant kind that lingered in his back, knees, and especially his legs. He brushed them off at first, convincing himself it was just aging, but the cramps grew worse, often waking him up at night. His calves would tighten like coiled wire, leaving him breathless. He'd walk it off, stretch, even try home remedies Linda found online, but nothing seemed to help for long. By the time Harold reached his late 60s, but the pace of life had slowed, and with it came an ache he couldn't ignore. Most nights, he'd wake up to that familiar, awful pain, a sudden tightening in his calf, like a knot twisting deep inside the muscle. Sometimes it hit so hard that he'd jump out of bed, gasping, trying to stretch it out. "Harold, are you okay?" Linda would ask, her sleepy voice filled with worry. "Just another cramp," he'd say, though it was becoming far more than just that. He tried everything: warm baths before bed, extra salt, less salt, magnesium pills from the pharmacy, even a homemade tonic an old friend swore by. But nothing lasted. Some nights, the pain was so bad he'd walk the floors until sunrise, his legs sore and trembling. The lack of sleep began to wear on him. He became irritable, anxious, even afraid to go to bed. "It's like my own body's turned against me," he told his doctor once, but the doctor just nodded and called it part of aging. That answer didn't sit right with him. During the day, he'd pretend to be fine, help Linda in the yard, fix the porch light, waved to the mailman, but inside he felt trapped. He wasn't afraid of death, but the thought of spending the rest of his years in nightly pain, that terrified him. He didn't realize it then, but he was standing at the edge of his breaking point. The moment where frustration, exhaustion, and hope all collide and force you to look for something new. It happened one night in early spring, the kind of night when the air feels heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Harold had fallen asleep watching an old baseball game rerun when the pain struck again, sharper than ever before. His calf locked up so violently that he cried out, waking Linda in a panic. She rushed to his side, trying to massage the muscle as he gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. When it finally eased, Harold just sat there, trembling, staring at his leg as if it belonged to someone else. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so helpless. "I can't do this every night," he whispered. "I just can't." The next morning, the cramp left a lingering soreness that followed him all day. He hobbled around the house, frustrated that something so small, a muscle spasm, could bring him so low. He'd always been the man who fixed things, but now he couldn't even fix himself. Over the next few weeks, the cramps came more often. Twice a night, sometimes 3. He started dreading bedtime, pacing the living room long after Linda had gone to sleep. He tried sleeping in a chair, elevating his legs, even wrapping them in warm towels. Nothing worked. He stopped going to church for a while, embarrassed by how stiffly he moved. His friends noticed. "You look tired, Harold," they'd say. He'd smile and wave it off, but deep down, he felt broken. Not just by pain, but by the sense that no one truly understood what he was going through. Then one morning, while sitting on the park bench rubbing his aching legs, an old man named Frank sat beside him. "You get those night cramps too, huh?" Frank asked, and with that simple question, that small moment of understanding, Harold's journey toward healing quietly began. That meeting at the park with Frank turned out to be more than coincidence. It was the turning point Harold had been praying for. Frank was a retired physical therapist in his late 70s, the kind of man who spoke with quiet confidence and a touch of humor that made you feel instantly at ease. When Harold mentioned how his legs cramped every night, Frank nodded knowingly. "I used to get those too," he said. "Woke me up screaming some nights. Then I learned it wasn't my legs that were the problem. It was what I wasn't doing before I went to bed." Harold leaned in, curious. Frank explained how circulation changes with age, how blood flow slows, muscles tighten, and dehydration sneaks up without you noticing. "But there's a simple way to stop it," Frank said. "I call it my foot trick." He told Harold to start doing gentle calf and toe flexes before bed. Slow, deliberate movements that stretched the muscles and encouraged blood flow. "Think of it as reminding your legs that you still need them," Frank chuckled. 5 minutes a night, that's all it takes. He also mentioned something Harold hadn't heard before, the importance of hydration and magnesium balance. He suggested Harold drink a small glass of warm water with a pinch of magnesium-rich sea salt before bed. "It helps your muscles relax," Frank said. There's even a Harvard study about it. Older adults who keep their electrolytes balanced experience up to 40% fewer night cramps. That night, Harold tried it. He sat on the edge of his bed, flexed his toes forward and backward for 5 slow minutes, then sipped the warm water like medicine. It felt odd, almost too simple to matter, but for the first time in weeks, he fell asleep without pain. When he woke up the next morning, he realized something astonishing. No cramps, no aching calves, just silence. From that night on, Harold committed to his new bedtime ritual. Every evening, around 9 p.m., he'd sit by the side of the bed, bare feet on the cool floor, and begin his 5-minute promise, as he called it, slowly flexing his toes toward him, holding for 10 seconds, then pointing them forward again. He'd repeat it 10 times, breathing deep, focusing on the feeling of calm returning to his legs. Linda would smile from her side of the bed. "You and your fancy foot dance," she'd tease. But secretly, she loved seeing him hopeful again. He also started walking more during the day, short, easy walks around the neighborhood to keep his circulation active. And before bed, he always drank that small glass of warm water with a pinch of sea salt and a squeeze of lemon. "It tastes like the ocean," he'd joke, "but it keeps the storm out of my legs." The results came slowly but surely. After a week, the cramps were nearly gone. After 2, his legs felt lighter, stronger. He started sleeping through the night again, something he hadn't done in months. The dark circles under his eyes began to fade, replaced with a quiet glow that only rest can bring. But more than physical relief, it gave him emotional peace. He felt in control again, like he had finally fixed the one thing that had broken him for too long. One evening at the park, he saw Frank again and thanked him. "You didn't just give me a trick," Harold said. "You gave me my nights back." Frank smiled, patting his shoulder. "Just remember, Harold, the body listens when you treat it kindly." If you've ever tried something similar, a simple habit that changed your life, share your story in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear it. It's been almost 3 years since Harold learned that little foot trick, and he still swears by it every single night. He'll tell anyone who listens, the mailman, the cashier at the grocery store, even the young folks at church. It's the simplest thing, but it gave me my life back. These days, Harold wakes up refreshed. He walks without stiffness, spends mornings tending to the small patch of tomatoes in his backyard, and sometimes helps his neighbors with odd electrical jobs just to keep his hands busy. But it's not the work that fulfills him now. It's the peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing the worst nights are behind him. He often sits on the porch with Linda as the sun goes down, her hand resting in his, both of them watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes up and down the street. "You know," he told her one evening, "I wish I'd listened to my body sooner. It was trying to talk to me. I just kept ignoring it." Linda smiled softly. "Well, it's never too late to start listening." That became Harold's mantra. He now believes healing doesn't always come from a bottle or a prescription. Sometimes it comes from the smallest daily act of self-care, done with faith and consistency. And when his grandkids visit, he teaches them the grandpa toe trick, laughing as they mimic him with exaggerated stretches. He tells them, "Take care of your body, and it'll take care of you." To anyone still struggling with those painful night cramps, Harold's message is simple. Don't give up. There's always a way to bring comfort back into your nights. If this story inspired you, like this video, and if you believe in second chances, don't forget to subscribe. Every story here reminds us that healing isn't a miracle. It's a choice, made one gentle step at a time. You know, every person I meet teaches me something new about life. And Harold reminded me that sometimes the answers we're searching for aren't complicated at all. They're simple, gentle, and already within our reach. It's never too late to heal, to learn, or to start again. Thanks for listening, my friends. Until next time, stay healthy, stay hopeful, and keep walking toward better days.